Welcome to the Crazy Might Work podcast, where we celebrate authors, entrepreneurs, innovators, inventors, and scientists who live at the very frontiers of human consciousness and possibility. We discuss their moments of breakthrough and analyze the strategies they use to enhance their own thinking and challenge conventional wisdom.
Welcome to you and to our guests listening today, and it's me, Melanie Farmer, the concierge of co-creation from Crazy Might Work, and I'm interviewing an incredible woman about leadership, teams, and purpose. And for those who don't know Shailee, you're in for a treat. I'm so excited. So many of us want to be either a really good leader or at least experience good leaders around us. And in teams, we see a lot of competition and conflict that can impact performance. And the other thing is that within all of that, we know that purpose is something that our world really needs. And we see this through the large global spike in resignations, either actual or in quiet quitting. And we know that a life with purpose is proven to increase engagement and also longevity, it turns out. So if we want to live longer, then having some purpose is really helpful. And so our guest today has experienced leadership in extreme situations with heightened adversity, and through it all achieved remarkable things. Indeed, Shailee has a whole new way of looking at purpose as well. I can't wait to dig into this. And in 2008, get ready, she scaled Mount Everest, and she leads the Seven Summits Women team, which went on to become the world's first female group to go on from Everest to scale the highest peak in each of the 7 continents. All women from different parts of Nepal, most of them new to mountaineering, and they faced, of course, considerable constraints and prejudice by even verbalizing this ambition from society, from many of their families, and even other climates. So she and her team have since received, of course, global accolades, including medal decoration from the President of Nepal to an audience in the White House. Still to give me the president's number after this if you have it. Anyway, she's now leading a program to help train young female survivors of trafficking to become potentially trekking guides. And of course, following the 2015 earthquake in Nepal, the team worked towards rebuilding schools in remote parts of Nepal that were impacted. And I can't go on without mentioning that Shailee is also an internationally sought after speaker. I think, if I'm not wrong, Shailee, the first Nepalese on the speaker circuit in America, and Shailee can draw on her visits to the Himalayas, sharing her hard-earned insights as a climber, a leader, and a woman. And so now, if that weren't enough, she enjoys hitting the stage as a stand-up comic. I mean, why not? And has performed at prestigious clubs in Nepal, USA, and India. So it is a profound honour to be introducing to our podcast today one of Nepal's exceptional leaders for transforming female empowerment and leadership in that country and inspiring women around the world with her infectious enthusiasm, including myself. A warm welcome to today's guest, Shailee Basnet.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Great to have you here, Shailee. Now, we're going to get into some of these questions, but of course, if along the way you're inspired to tell us something else that you think our listeners would really like to hear, any stories, anecdotes, feel free to dive off in a little side trip as we get through the questions that we're going to ask. Happy to do that. But the first thing I want to do, of course, and I think probably all of our listeners on here, is can you describe and compare the feeling of arriving on the summit of Mount Everest and then the feeling of walking back home into Kathmandu after that successful achievement? Because I think most people don't realise that it's actually getting down the mountain can be just as hard or treacherous as going up the mountain, and both of those emotions are probably quite different moments.
When I was super close to the summit. I could see the summit with my eyes. The very first thought I had in my mind was, I'm the craziest person on this planet. Because about a year before, I had nothing to do with mountains. I was not athletic. The school I went to had no sports for girls. And that was why I always knew I had to try something physical. I needed a physical challenge because I didn't know what my body was able to do. And you can't tell from here, but I like to tell people I'm 5 feet tall on a good day. So I am this short, tiny, petite person who never played sports. And one day I signed up to climb Mount Everest, and I was literally looking down at my crampons, the spikes gripping into the ice and rock. And I had the biggest smile inside my oxygen mask. And I was thinking, I'm the craziest person on this planet. One day I decide to do this, and I'm standing right here. That was my very first moment. And when I actually, got to the summit, I was like, when I was thinking this was the summit slope, and I actually reached the very highest high point. Um, the best thing is the view. It's a million shades of blue and white, just mountains rolling, clouds. You can see the curvature of earth. It just
wow.
is so beautiful, so pristine. And in Nepal, it's primarily Hindu and Buddhist cultures, religions mix up. And in both, we worship the mountains. We consider mountains to be divine. So when I was at the summit, I could feel that divinity. I really felt, okay, this is what they mean. It's not just textbook. It's not just scripture. There's something very beautiful, very powerful here. And it's not just in a poetic, beautiful way. It's also fierce. Divinity can be fierce too. So in one, stroke of nature, we could all be just dust particles in that mountain. So I felt that full force of, from beauty to divinity of, being fierce. It's all encapsulated in that moment. That was my moment on the summit. When I returned, a lot of people, especially journalists, were asking me, "Oh, whom did you think of at the summit? Whom did you miss?" And I was like, "No one." I was just at the summit. I was very present. I was just there. There was nobody, no other thing in my mind. I was just probably my first moment of being one with nature. Just that emptiness of present moment. So I didn't think of anyone, but people don't ask me whom did I think of on my way back down, because coming back down is so difficult, especially mentally, I think, than physically. But you're, I think, a little, loose on focus. And so at that time, oh my God, I was thinking of my family, my friends, my, maybe teachers, the dogs that keep barking in our neighborhood in the middle of the night, the spider in the bathroom. Like, I was missing everyone. I was thinking of everyone. I remember, at the summit feeling so ecstatic. And at one point, it does sink in that, okay, you've only climbed half a mountain, half of this mountain. Getting to the summit is not success. Coming back down is the success. It's mandatory. So you have to be mentally super prepared for that. So I remember telling myself again and again during that descent that this is not success, this is not success, this is not success, down to the next camp and the next camp and the next camp, go to Kathmandu, drive home, go to your bedroom, say hi to the spider in the bathroom. That's success. That was my mindset.
Wow. I have to ask you, did you expect to feel what you felt? Like just hearing you describe that oneness with nature, and I know that many of us might have had a moment like that, but not quite to that level. Did it take you by surprise?
At the moment, no, because I was just there. So I don't think I was even in a state to analyze or process. I was just there experiencing. When I look back, I do realize that when me and I believe for my team members too, when we're climbing Everest, at the summit, we were there with our mind, body, and spirit. there have been mountains where we literally just dragged our bodies up there. We just wanted to be done with it, and we're just like, our ego, our body was driving us to the summit. But fortunately, Everest was not that. Everest was something we'd prepared for almost a year, and by the time we're on the summit, I was the fittest I've ever been. So it was not like, I was struggling up there. I literally danced on the summit with one of my teammates, so I was in a perfect, like, physical shape, mentally at very peace. There was no drama, no conflict in my head. And spiritually, I was just there. So in that moment, it was just perfect. And now coming back from Everest, it's been a while I was on that mountain. Whatever I do, like even when we're doing this podcast, the rule kind of I have in the back of my head is that, am I here in my mind, body, and spirit? I'm only going to sign up for things that where these three aspects are aligned. So I wasn't surprised then, but it was something so special that I couldn't have ever imagined to happen.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. It's such, you're painting a really good picture of what that must have felt like. And so, I mean, of course, you had quite high diversity in the team that you kind of pulled together to go up that mountain. And so I imagine with that, with any team, as soon as there's another human, there's going to be potential conflict. So I wonder how conflict management happened at a team level. That's quite a high ambition. I know that you girls or women didn't all know each other to start with. And so did you agree how that would be managed or set any protocols? And if someone broke the rules, would they be like, you're off the mountain, you're on your own? I mean, how did that all work in terms of how you're going to manage conflict in a team setting?
First of all, I must acknowledge you for, understanding the diversity we had in our team, because, I travel internationally. I spend half my time in the United States. And so I do get this question like, okay, if all of you are from Nepal, how is it a inclusive team? So for a lot of, I think, maybe Western or American, diversity means people from different countries. But the reality is, in any country in the world, most of the countries have their own diversity. So Nepal has more than 100 ethnicities within. So, we have our own ethnic equality to be achieved, inclusivity to be achieved. So that's why it was pretty phenomenal that our team included women from 6 different ethnic backgrounds, from the mountains, the mid-hills, the flat plains of Nepal. So geographic diversity, it was all in there. Now, did we know how to be inclusive? Did we know how to address our conflicts, especially those surrounding our diversity? I don't think so. We were all, I like to say, young and stupid. So we had a big learning curve for sure. And what really kept us going was our commitment to the common goal. Like, for example, we're trying to climb Everest, and, some of my friends would be like, oh, we have to climb a big hill, a big mountain with a lot of weight, and that's how you train for Everest. And some of us are like, but we have to go to the gym, and that comes from different background of being a city person versus a rural person's, a lot of differences there. And we literally get into fights. We'd be like, no, this is better way of training. That is better way of training. And you know what we ended up doing? We ended up doing both. And so we were training like 6 hours every single day, and the reason those conflicts weren't such a big deal is because at the end of the day, all of us were looking and trying to explore the best way to make it to the summit of Everest. We had the same common goal in mind. We were not, we didn't have different goalposts. We're all going on the same march. So the different approaches at the end of the day, again, in retrospect, it made our team more richer, in resources, in ideas, in execution. So that continued during the 7 summits. And we also did learn along the way that, our differences is not about right or wrong. Our differences comes from different wisdom that we have, and it does only make us richer. So we had to learn it, but because we were all committed to that same goal, it helped us stay in track.
Wow. It does speak a lot to how you must have established that joint vision of what, so that right at the start, right, to sort of feel then whatever else was happening, it wasn't going to divert any of you from, or distract any of you from that goal and that purpose.
Absolutely. And especially in the case of Seven Summits, it's not just one mountain. We have signed up for 6 more mountains, and that took more than 6-7 years of our lives. We're in the prime of our youth. We could be making a lot of money, building career, starting families. There are a lot of other options, and we all signed up for this, and we don't know how long it's going to take, because we thought we'd be done in 2 years, but we could never raise that kind of fund. And we're managing the team ourselves. There was a global recession. So for us to just be committed to that goal, not knowing when this is going to end, so I think that's kind of even more phenomenal when I think about it, because if I'm like, okay, let's do this, we got 3 years and we're going to be done, then okay, 3 years of my life, I can commit. But here we're saying, let's do 7 summits. It might take 2 years, it might take 5 years, it might take 7 years, and we don't know if it will be done in 7 years or not. So to have your team committed to that goal for that long, that was definitely a challenge, a test, but at the same time, it was so clear who was committed to it and who was not. So when you are so much into that shared vision, all the other differences, they become too little. That's not your problem at all. You just know where this person is coming from. Sometimes you take that in, make it part of your journey. Sometimes you have to reject it and be respectful in why that's not going to work. But we all know that we are on this journey to the next mountain.
That's amazing. And look, I think of you and your team as really a group of innovators. I feel like that's a signature of yours. And so I wonder about, when I think about innovation, is doing things a bit differently, trying new things. Certainly, I think given the diversity and the lack of experience and these other factors in all of the 7 summits, there would have been times when you've had to come up with new ideas, new approaches, maybe try things a different way. Is there an example of how that might have played out in your journey through those 7 summits with the team, and maybe how you approach adopting new or different ideas, either yourself or as a team?
Especially with the 7 summits, there was not a female team that had done the 7 summits together as a team before us. And we didn't even know this before we signed up, because there are other women who have climbed the 7 summits. So we're inspired by them for sure. So we're like, yeah, let's do it as a team. And then we learned that, as a team of women, this hasn't been done before. So in that sense, we didn't have footsteps to follow. So there was a lot of learning by doing. When I think about it, one of the biggest strengths we had as individual people in the team and as a team is that when we realized that something hadn't been done before, a lot of time people around you, and people not just critical of you, but well-meaning people, will tell you that, oh, nobody's done this before, how you gonna do it? There are people coming up to us and telling, like, developed countries, maybe America, Australia, United Kingdom, there hasn't been a women team from these big developed economies doing this. So how can a team of young women from ordinary, humble backgrounds, from a small economy like Nepal, achieve this? This is, and literally there were people who would come to our fundraisers, would sign a check for, whatever they could. And they would literally tell us, I wish you all the best for your mission impossible. So even supportive people, they were like, this is just too big, because it's not just one person, it's a big team, and it's not one mountain, it's, continuously 6-7 different mountains. So at that time, understanding that just because something hasn't been done before doesn't mean you can't do it. If something hasn't been done before, that means you could be the pioneer there. You could take leadership there. You could explore. It will be definitely a longer journey. It will not be a straightforward way to success, but that means that can be done. We had that spirit as a team. We had that mindset, and for us, that's what probably was most innovative about us. We're not scared or shooed away by the idea that, oh, nobody has done this before us, so we don't know where to go, what to do, how are we going to go about it. We're always looking at solutions. We're like, okay, nobody has done this before. So we did this and this and that for Everest. What can we do for the next mountain? So looking at just what's in front of us. There were people who also suggested that we should raise funds for the entire mission first, and then we should climb. But we chose to raise funds for one mountain and then climb and then take the other one. That was also, in retrospect, I think a good decision we took, because I think our climbing energy would have dwindled if we just, stayed not climbing for 2 years, 3 years, and then chased mountain each summer. So in my perspective, innovation for our team definitely was, if there's something that hasn't been done before, we're going to try it.
Yeah, I really take away from that literally climbing a mountain is this goal, but the fact that if you were going to climb 7 mountains, that there were milestones to be achieved and celebrated along the way, rather than waiting to do the big thing when all of the funds and resources are available. So I think that's a really good lesson in any endeavour. Many of our clients are trying to tackle some pretty wicked problems, like thinking about how do we fly airplanes without oil and all of these sorts of things. And so, but there's a starting point and there are milestones. So I really love the way that you framed that. And whether it was an intentional or not, it's a nice takeaway to reflect on how much that contributed to the energy levels, to your point of keeping everyone engaged and keeping, I guess, also those who want to invest in your next mountain, engaged and believing in what you can do next. And so, part of that for me is about the sense of purpose you must all have had. And so can you talk a little bit about, what you think a sense of purpose had in your journey so far?
When I started, for me, all I cared about was I didn't get to play sports as a little girl in my school. And I know I was a smart kid. I could do computers, maths, all of that. I had fun with those. But I knew that physically, I don't know. I have not even kicked a ball or anything. So I knew I wanted to try what my body was able to do. So when this opportunity to climb Everest came up, that was my only purpose. Can I train? Can I do the first trek? Can I carry 5 kilos? And once I could carry 5 kilos, can I carry 10 kilos? Can I carry 20 kilos? So it was all about testing my physical limits, physical ability. It was all about that. And when I met my team, the rest of the members in my Everest team, they all come from different backgrounds. They have their own different motivations. And once I found them, I literally felt like I found my tribe. I was committed to them. There's so many stories where I can tell you, like these are absolute strangers. I've never met any of them before. And like one of the things, I don't know if it's even appropriate for a public, discussion, was I have a very bad like body odor issue. And, especially when you're training, you're sweating a lot and everything, right? And I've had a great band of family, best friends, and nobody ever told me when I was, the smelly person. And these strangers, these women, they're like, oh, Shailee, you need to change your shirt. Oh, Shailee, go take shower. And I was so thankful to them, because to me, that was like, they want me to be better. They want me to succeed. They don't want me to be embarrassed when we meet somebody important. I was so thankful. It is a very small thing, And in today's world, I understand, we do have to be careful about other person's sentiment if they're going to be offended by you telling things about them. But we met in such circumstances and such setting that climbing this mountain was really important. And in that process, I realized that these girls were not just, there as team members, but they're really there as friends. They really wanted me to succeed in everything I picked up. I failed climbing, climbing routes, and I was so humiliated. I thought, oh my God, I'm so miserable, pathetic. I am trying to climb Everest, and I can't even climb this easy rock face. And they all surrounded me, and they're all giving me tips like, oh, don't stick your butt out, keep your spine straight, don't take that ledge, avoid that ledge. Like in their mind, like they didn't even say the word fail even once. They just told me how to succeed next time. So when I met them, my team became my purpose. I was so motivated by this team that I was like, I don't care if they go to the moon. I don't care if they go underwater into the ocean. I want to be with this kind of people who tell me where I am lacking, who tell me how I can do better next time. So my team became my purpose. And I would tell them, I don't care what we do, even after Everest, even if there is one single person from the team left who's dedicated to something, I'll be there for you. So I made that promise, and I'm still living that promise 15 years later. After Everest, there was 7 summits. While we were doing 7 summits, we started working with young survivors of sex trafficking. There was a big earthquake in Nepal. We started building schools. So for me, at one point, it all became about the team. But thanks to that connection, that bonding, we had the good fortune to start working with, like I said, survivor sisters. That is now our purpose. That is now our next, big mountain. But I did not start with that purpose. I started with a personal challenge that I don't know what my body can do, and I want to test my physical limit. And in that journey, spending my, young and stupid energy, I found the right team. And then with our combined energy, effort, vision, we came together with Survivor Sisters. We came together with villages that were affected by the earthquake. And that gave us purpose. And we realized all the mountaineering success we've had has given us enough resources and network to be able to help them. So the purpose has evolved from a personal challenge to now being a platform to empower and support others.
Wow. So it does sound like it's not so much what you do, it's how you do things. If you're going to just think about what purpose is to you now.
Absolutely. You took words from my mind, from my lips, because after all these years, I do get this question a lot of time that, oh, you get to climb mountains, you work in the villages, you work with survivors, all of that. And it all sounds very, romantic. People are like, oh, I'm in this soul sucking corporate job. And I remind them, wait a minute, no, to get that corporate job, we should pause for a minute and acknowledge the struggle, the fights people before us had to put on, the women before us had to put on, even men, because if you ask me, I'm working with hundreds of girls, either marginalized communities or survivors of various issues. The best thing I could do I could imagine is if all of them could get those kind of jobs, so purpose is all about, what I've learned today is that purpose is all about how you do it. Purpose is not what you do. You could be in a corporate job, you could be running a nonprofit, you could be a climber, you could be an artist, but how do you do it? You could be in a fantastic corporate job, all of that. You could be into finance and all, and you could still do it in a way where your mind feels nurtured. And that's possible. And that's the goal for millions of girls in the world.
Yeah, wow. Okay, so look, I think the first time we spoke, not so long ago, Shailee, that I don't know if you remember, but you used, I think it was these words where you said, we have a responsibility to honor the warriors before us.
Absolutely.
And I think that's what I'm hearing. Is that sort of, have I said that correctly?
Yes. So this is how I look at it. Okay. In 2008, when my team climbed Everest, we had our own set of struggles, but we also had a band of supporters from government of Nepal to the United Nations. And that became possible because there were women before us who climbed the mountain, and they opened, that opportunity for us. By the time we arrived, whatever they had to struggle with, we didn't have to struggle with that anymore. The first Nepali woman to climb Mount Everest, Pasang Lamu Sherpa, she climbed in 1993, and the government at the time did not waive her permit royalty. And her claim was, as a Nepali, I should be free to climb my own mountain. Why should I pay $50,000 or something insane? That should be waived. And the government did not waive that. And later she climbed Everest. She did pass away on the mountain, but it became a major embarrassment, I think, for the government that there was one woman finally in this long history of climbing, and the government wasn't there. So by the time we went to climb Mount Everest, we met the prime minister, and it was the same prime minister who was there in 1993. And we didn't even have to open our mouths. He was like, money will not stop you from climbing this mountain. Don't even worry about royalty. And the government also signed maybe, equivalent of $10,000 of check for us. And that's because women before us, pioneers before us, had opened that way for us. But that does not mean we didn't have our own struggle. We did have our own struggle. And whatever we've done, women climbing after us, they won't have the same struggle, but they will have their own struggle. And whatever they are able to unlock, that will make life that much easier for the next generation. And they will have their own battles too. So we always, as we, glorify our struggle, our challenges, how nobody believed in me and all of that, we do have to remember that we stand on the shoulders of giants.
The really people like who have long-term historical view of the world. It sort of creates humility too when you think of what others have overcome and then what we have overcome and what others are yet to overcome. It's a nice way of viewing the world in a really more global historical picture way.
And to come back to what you're saying, so in every step we take, realizing we're standing on the shoulders of giants before us, and we have the responsibility towards the generation that comes after us, and knowing where to put your energy, which is picking your battle, and knowing that that is your responsibility to the next generation, I think is the only way for us to create a better world.
And look, I think from what I've heard of you before, you've certainly talked about that it wasn't just about climbing a mountain, it was about challenging gender stereotypes. And I really appreciated something that you talked about where, the mountain treats everyone equally. It doesn't care if you're a man or you're a woman, it doesn't care how old you are. And the world should treat us this way. So I really appreciate that sentiment. And I know that since you climbed as a all-female team, since that time, I think it's a 13-year-old girl or something like this, the youngest girl to ever has climbed Everest. And I'm thinking of myself at 13, I probably would have had a go, but I'm pretty sure I would have not done very well unless I was riding my dog up the mountain or something like that. So I guess I want to ask you, Shailee, what is it that drives you to surprise yourself and stretch your limits in this way? Where has this come from? And, can we get some too?
One of the things that I am psyched about is just the fact that I'm a human being. I probably had my first moment of realization when I was very young. I don't remember what age, maybe 5, 6, 7, I don't know. But I was looking at the mirror. My mom was putting on her sari and a little makeup to go get ready to work. And I was just being the little monkey see, monkey do child, just mimicking my mom. And I remember a moment looking into the mirror, and I just paused. There was a moment that I just froze in a good way. And I was just thrilled to see that reflection and realize that wait a minute, I'm a human being. So everything cool that I know of, human beings do that. Tigers are stronger, they don't go to the moon. Elephants are super strong and all, they don't write poetry. So I was like, oh my God, I'm a human being. So I can go to the moon, I can make movies, I can make innovation. Like I am free to do whatever cool thing I want to do. So I had that little spark, that moment as a kid, and I think that's something that has never been extinguished. Now, during my school years, because there was no sports, and literally teachers would ridicule girls for being too jumpy. Um, so there was a time in my teens where that flame had really, gotten
Diminished.
smaller and smaller. Yes, and it probably gotten close to getting extinguished. But thankfully, for whatever circumstances, situations I have around me, I always knew that I have absolute freedom to do whatever I want to do. And this is not because, like, I come from a middle class family. So it was not like my parents could write big check for whatever I wanted to do. I knew that, I can make money, I can make decisions, I can have my own choices. So I just feel this enormous sense of freedom. So that's why when I signed up for stand up comedy, I just look at it and I was like, thousands of people are doing it. So, you know, I'm a human too. Why can't I try it? And, worst case scenario, you fail. So what? You try again another time. So for me, I look at people around me, and a lot of times we are caught up in a lot of things that we think are hindrances, are limitations. But when I look at everybody else too, I do think that everybody is so free that they just don't realize. Maybe sometimes we're all so free, we can do whatever we want. And then once you pick that, then obviously you have to work hard towards it, you have to hustle, you have to be really dedicated to it. That part is there, but we are a lot more free than I think a lot of us realize.
It's interesting because I feel like it's a belief, a mindset, and a sort of decision almost that we can make versus a decision that we are trapped, or a decision that we are not free. So I feel like that somehow that teenager saw something and realized there's a freedom, and then thankfully for the rest of us, that didn't go out completely and the fire is still burning.
Yes, I also like to think of, I think it's Newton's one of the laws where, if you're going in the same direction at the same speed, then you don't feel the movement. So I don't want to spend my life like that. So if there is an external force that changes the direction, then you feel the bump. So when you're in the car, even if you're driving high speed, you feel like you don't feel the movement. There has to be a bump or a turn or a change of speed. Then you realize. So life is kind of like that too. If we just continue in that sense, then we don't realize how much time has already gone. So it's nice to throw in little challenges here and there to make sense of time. Otherwise, we're 80 and we don't even know where all that time went.
And I can't wait for you to be president. You're going to look back and go, yes, well, So, I mean, look, you did talk about how it sounds romantic to the rest of us, that this life that you've had and these things that you're doing, and helping people post earthquake and all of this. But I'm sure that there are moments where your resolve would be tested, and I guess for those of us who are tackling our own mountain, what sort of things do you find help you get through those moments? Maybe if you gave an example where that's helped, or what sort of thing would rattle you?
I did. This makes me think of one particular incident on a mountain. So we're climbing Mount Aconcagua in South America, and there were seven of us. Were going up, and the very beginning, in the first hour of climbing, I have a frostnip. My big thumb, there's a feeling like a needle is piercing. That's how cold. And I told my girls, and it never happened before. I never had that issue. So I told my girls, and they're like, oh, keep climbing, the heat you generate, and then it's morning, so there'll be sun coming in, so you'll be fine. And it made sense. So I continued going. But around 3 in the afternoon, I knew that it's not going to get any warmer. This is not going away. I could see the summit with my eyes. It was only about 2 hours away. And I decided to turn around. My other friend Maya also had similar issues. And again, we never had any of these kind of issues before in any of the other mountains. And she's a fighter. She's my hero, and she says we should turn around. So then no questions asked. So there's 3 of us who are being a little slow, being affected by one thing or the other. So 3 of us had to turn around. 4 of our team members continue to the summit of this mountain, and they make it to the summit. Now, they don't even know we have turned around because they were good. They were, perfect condition to go. So we didn't want to discourage them. So they made it to the summit, and they call us on the radio, and they're like, you were only 2 hours away. That's nothing. You could have all, made it. Why did you turn around? And they're crying. We're always together on summit. Where are you girls? Why didn't you come? And we're like, you are our heroes. We're so proud of you. Because of you, the team is successful. And please remember, we are safe. So that's success. We are not in trouble. That's success. We'll meet you at the camp, and, this is a success. So don't think poorly of this. And so we asked them to come back, safely. And we turn on the radio, and there is this, we're on this big giant slope of the Andes in Aconcagua. And one of our friend, Pooja, and she says that, there was so much hard work put into this, so much, funds that had to be raised, media buzz, training. It's a lot of work, right? And she was like, this is so sad. And the 3 of us, we start crying. We're hugging and we're crying on that mountain. And as we're crying, Maya, in Nepali language, she says, we've won. We've won again. And that was all we needed. Yes, we won. Our team made it to the summit. Yes. Are all of us safe? Yes. Are we heading back, and are we going to have a party? Yes. Are we all set for the next climb? Oh, hell yes, we're going to make that happen. So that was the team dynamic we had. So somehow it's not like there aren't bad, dark, heavy moments. There is, but either somebody will break into a dance, or somebody will crack a joke, somebody will give you a hug, sometimes you cry, somebody says this, words of inspiration, puts things in perspective. That's what kept us going. During all our climbing years, both on and off the mountain, this was really our pillar of strength.
Yeah, so I'm hearing a lot of things in there, right? Humor, love, perspective, and I guess having those at the moment you really need them is the thing that's going to get you through all sorts of things. So no doubt you're all very good friends through that whole experience. And I love the fact that, like you said in the very beginning, it is a very diverse, unlikely group of friends who may not have met except through the mechanism of the Let's All Climb Everest. And it's just inspiring to see such strong friendships form out of that as an example for others of what friends can do despite those diversities or because of those diversities. So look, I know you're a regular meditator, and I would like to just, I suppose, unpack that and hear a little bit how you engage in that practice, maybe when or how or why. Those sorts of things are really helpful to understand that, what is that to you? How does that play out? And how important is that in your life?
I will jump into meditation as part of maybe, larger answer to your previous question. Having that kind of bonding, that kind of team, and wisdom in the team. It's not just that you are very tight and all of you are stupid. That doesn't help either. So having that kind of wisdom and strength in the team, that was definitely a major support for all of us. Individually, for me, My family has been supportive. My husband, Tyler, he's super supportive. My friend Chunu, her husband, Sarad, they are like the 8th and 9th members of our team. They've been with us before we even got married, and they have put their everything. In Nepali, I think we say tan man dhan, which means your body, your mind, and your money. So
Right.
they have
That's
been,
committed.
yes. So they have been, our families have been super supportive. We have had a good band of supporters, mentors. We've had really amazing mentors when things got really tough. And I remember going to one person and thinking they're gonna be not nice to us and stuff. They were like, first they were very critical. What's happening? How many girls are in the team? What's your status? Are you climbing or not? And I'm answering as the leader of the mission. And after his third or fourth question, he was like, you know what? People are coming after you because you're doing something. And I've had the same experience in my own business in the past. If you had been doing nothing, no one would be after you. Because you're doing something, you're making people uncomfortable. So take it in your stride. Don't worry, I'm here to support you. So we had those kind of mentors, so that helped us a lot. Personally, for me, meditation has been a huge support system. I think if I didn't have a meditative practice, I may not have had the emotional, mental bandwidth to go through everything that we went through. I went for my first meditation course right after my high school. So by the time I signed up for Everest, I'd been practicing for 7 years. And during the 7 summits, especially after you take leadership, you obviously get a lot more credit, but you also have to face all the criticisms, apprehensions. You are the one to answer, sometimes attacked. So to face those things in a worldly matter, if somebody comes to me and says this is wrong or you're not doing the right thing, this and that, I would try everything possible to address that. But every day, then I would go home and I would just meditate on that aspect. If somebody's criticism is making me feel hurt, then I know that person may be coming from wrong intentions or whatever. But if I am hurt, then that means there's something that's not very strong within me. There's something within me that's crying for help. So that hurt signifies something. Where is that hurt coming from? Now, at that time, therapy wasn't popular. It wasn't a thing we even heard in Nepal. So if it was today, I would have probably found myself a therapist. But meditation, the practice I have, it's all about awareness. And how does that awareness help you? For example, let's say I'm angry at you. So I will say hurtful things. My actions will be driven by anger. It's all the anger, the emotion is deciding my words, my action, everything. When you have awareness that I'm angry, you don't even have to tell yourself, oh, don't be angry, it's not a good thing or something. The minute you're aware you're angry, if you have anger, then it's a thing within your control. Sometimes you might have to use the anger to get things done. And sometimes you just realize that you're being stupid, your ego is being bruised, and you don't need to respond to this. So that's how meditation has been helpful. It's a practice of awareness. I started with Buddhist meditation, Vipassana, and the last 6-7 years I've been going to a school whose wisdom does come from more of a Vedic sources. There was one time on Everest that I couldn't make it to the summit. It was my summit push. Somebody had just passed away, and somebody from a different team had just passed away. I happened to be there when that happened. This is 2 a.m. So I was in a very, very bad place. I literally looked at Everest and I asked, are you divine or are you monster? We worship you, but you ruined my summit attempt and you just took away somebody's life. So I looked at Everest and I asked this question, are you divine or are you a monster? After maybe 10 minutes of that internal turmoil, questioning everything, being a really, really dark, negative space, I just became aware of where my emotions, my mind was leading me. So I just told myself, stop. You cannot think positive right now. It's impossible to, but you should not be thinking negative either. So just sit here. And I asked myself, this question arose within me 3 times. I asked myself, what is the best thing I can do in the worst moment of my life? Now, this is the worst moment of my life. What is the best thing I can do? And I just sat there praying for the departed soul. And, it's a long story, but the short of it, I got second chance to go up with the second team, and I made it to the summit. It was the most beautiful summit push ever. So the way I see it, if I had not stopped myself from, diving deeper into that negative rabbit hole, I do think in that kind of, elevation so high in the world, your mental state does affect your physical state too. So 2 days later, when I had the second shot, I probably wouldn't have been in that physical state, in that finest physical fit form. So stopping myself in the worst moment of my life from going on with negative thoughts, I don't think I could have done that if I didn't have the tools of meditation with me. So on the mountain, off the mountain, all credit to Buddha, to all the masters. I owe my success to them.
What a gift, and so humble as well, the way you're framing that. And I know that story with the timer. It's not in the detail you would, of course, but I think I think you might have said once that if God himself had appeared and said, you're not going up this mountain, you would have said, get out of my way. So I think at that point, but the resolve, and I love the thought that you were able to pull yourself together. And I think that the meditation practice that you described, because you'd been doing it for some years, that would have been your a way of anchoring yourself. So, I suppose that being fit in terms of mentally is equally important to being in any other way intellectually fit. What I'm hearing is there's the spiritual fitness in a way that is required to avoid that spiral that can easily happen and destroy the goal that you might have in the end. And I guess I want to come now to a project that, I think it's going to leave a really lasting legacy in Nepal. And this is your Female Leadership Academy. And so I'm interested with that, which is a relatively recent endeavour. I suppose I'm just interested to know, what are you teaching in there? Do you have a framework? Our audience are always interested in leadership capability frameworks, but also, I suppose, a little bit about the program itself, the academy itself, and how things are going with that.
So Female Leadership Academy, the seed for it was planted sometime around 2014. We came across 5 young women who were survivors of girl trafficking. So they were from very poor families, rural part of Nepal. They promised education somewhere in India, and then next thing they know, they've been sold. They tell us that it's almost near impossible to run away from that place. And if they run back, and if they're caught, they're not even killed, they're tortured, so that other girls don't try the same thing. And all the girls we met, they took that risk, they escaped from that place. But once back in Nepal, their families are still in poverty, they don't have education, they don't have job skills, and they're caught in very low paying jobs, which aren't real careers. So when we met them, from my team, Maya and I took the leadership, and we looked at them. They're all young, they're all energetic, strong, very, very resilient women. All they needed was a little bit of support, a little bit of mentoring training. So we started training them. 3 of them earned their trekking guide license. And we asked them, we just did this as emotional investment. Would you think of this program? Should we continue? And they not only insisted that we should continue the program, they even said that because of you, we're here today, and I'm ready to do my part for the next generation of survivor sisters, and we're so proud. We're so proud of them. So that's how it all started. And we wanted to scale the program much earlier, but due to COVID, we had to stick to smaller batches. And last year, finally, we're able to scale the program, and we now call it Female Leadership Academy. Last year, we trained around 150 young women, 100 of them, 100 plus in the villages where they're still going to high school. So they're not survivors of anything extreme, but they're vulnerable. They're from marginalized communities. They are not given a lot of choices in life. So our idea is to make an intervention while they're still in the village. And so we provide English language lessons, we provide public speaking lessons, computer lessons, career exposure. They all went to base camp of a nearby mountain. So all these various exposures so that they can be at least confident enough to express what they want to do. And in the second year, out of those 100 plus women, we are now working with 40 of them, and we're training them to become guides in the outdoor industry. So in December, in fact, late November, we're going to take 40 of them for professional mountaineering training at a base camp of a mountain. And if the weather supports and all, they're going to also be climbing a big mountain. So we're very, very excited. This is what we're doing. Our goal is to provide what we call foundation training, skills you need for any kind of job, whether you want to do podcast or become a banker or a climber. So language lessons, confidence, speaking up, knowing your legal rights, knowing your reproductive health. So these are all part of the first year foundation training. And then second year, they can decide where they want to build their career, and we'll either mentor them directly if they want to build career in the outdoor industry, or we'll match them with mentors. If they want to pick up IT or journalism, other things, we'll match them with mentors so that they can then build careers. So the goal is to put a stop to all the ills girls in these villages face, from trafficking to child marriage, child labor, various kinds of abuses and exploitation, and just see this reason evolve as a reason of super empowered young women.
And I think, for listeners who might not know, there are not that many female climbers or guides in that part of Nepal, in Nepal at all. So I think that some of the work that the ground that you've been breaking is actually to say we need to have female guides as well. And
absolutely. So we have very few female guides, but there is a big demand. Internationally, there are more female and family travelers. And for example, if you were to come to Nepal and say, wanted to go for a high altitude experience, chances are you'd be like, hey, is there a female guide? So there is so much demand for female guide, but I cannot just give you somebody because they've had, difficult backstory. I can only give you somebody who's licensed, who's professional, who can save your life if you thought you were going to die on a mountain, right? They have to be that skilled. So it takes a lot of investment to build that kind of human resource. And we have to start from the super basic stuff of language, of speaking up, and then the, advanced skills of like rope work and being in the mountains and all of that. So earning their license. So it's a huge investment. And unfortunately, right now, we don't have any such avenue where these young people, men or women, can go and be like, hey, I know nothing, but I want to be a mountain guide or outdoor guide, tour guide. Can I train with you? That kind of investment is not being made. And that's why there is that gap. Everybody demands female guides. There's no supply of female guides. And that's where we thought we could be the bridge.
Is there a goal that you might have for yourself, Shailee, that might even surprise your team, that to hear you say that, like, what's next?
So I spoke about freedom, right? So who knows? 2 years from now, I might decide I want to be a chef or a movie director. I feel absolutely free to do whatever, I feel at the moment. Right now, Female Leadership Academy is our Everest. Honestly, like I said, my journey started as a personal challenge, but it doesn't excite me anymore to see a mountain and just climb for personal pleasure. It's a lot more rewarding when we're doing even a small trek as part of a cause. So, Female Leadership Academy is our big mountain. That's what we're committed to. Besides, I really also want to go ahead with my stand up career. I
Nice.
organized a big comedy show last year in San Francisco, and next year onwards, I want to do more big theaters around the United States, North America, maybe Australia someday. And the goal for me is to use the stand-up events as fundraiser for the Female Leadership Academy. So for me, it's like like how we make a braid. So I get to do stand-up, I get to raise funds for the girls, so, and I'm also putting myself out there in the map. So it's a win-win-win. That's my personal plan next year onwards. And I feel absolutely privileged that I get to all of this.
Fantastic. And so for those of us who might want to either support your inspiring work in Nepal or maybe climb a mountain with you or something like that, what's the best way they could do that, or how might they get started? How might we get started?
Feel free to reach out to us. The best place to get our information is our website. So 7summitswomen.org is where all the details about our work is. And if you want to support, make some donation or ask us about volunteering opportunities, you can definitely go in there. If you want to stay in touch with me, if you want to find out where I'm doing my comedy next or where I'm speaking next, you can go to my personal website, ShaileeBasnet.com, and you can, of course, find out about the Female Leadership Academy as well in my personal website too.
Nice. Thank you. And so, look, a couple of highlights for me just to bring us to a close, Shailee. And I could talk to you for hours and hours and hours, and perhaps we'll invite you back if you'll come back. Just to thank you for sharing your insights on leadership, teams, and purpose, and some of the tips and I suppose things that you do, strategies that you use to keep resilient and keep picking up. I really heard some of the things in there about love, humour, wisdom and friendship, and how those things can really support us to stay on track. The power of meditation to invest as a spiritual strength so that we don't fall over. The fact that being smelly should be no barrier to success. I hope that's all right to say. And I suppose I really am excited by the idea of freedom. I think what I would love to see is your women or girls in the Leadership Academy looking at themselves in the mirror, having a moment where they realize that they are a human being and that they have the freedom to choose anything. So I love that story. And I can just imagine you doing that, and I can imagine those girls having that moment, hopefully through your inspiration and mentorship. And I guess on that, the message of mentorship, how important that is for a pathway for those who need that guidance. I know we're all looking for mentors for different things at different times. So we look forward to seeing what you do next. Maybe you're going to be a chef. I'm sure if you do decide to make Hollywood movies, Shailee, that you're going to have no problem being a location scout and finding incredible places to film. And I'm going to have my eye on the short hikes that I think that you sometimes offer. So really keen personally to get involved in that. And as Shailee said, Shailee Basnet, SHAILEE Basnet, BASNET.com, and 7summitswomen.org to get involved in doing and support the projects that you and your team are doing. So keep in touch. Really grateful for your time today, and I know that's going to be really helpful for many of our listeners who are, of course, in a world that's continually disrupted, and remembering to honour the warriors who walked before us. And thank you so much.
Thank you. I had a great time. Thank you so much.